We have breaking news that we're following in Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering and sex trafficking trial in just moments.
The first week of testimony in the high-profile sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy trial against Sean Diddy Combs.
Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you're about to hear comes directly from federal courtroom testimony in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. In a jaw-dropping twist no one expected, Wendy Williams, the original queen of Hot Topics, the voice they tried to silence, has now taken the stand in federal court. After years of whispers, rumors, and industry exile, Wendy is finally going on the record. And this isn't just about Diddy. Her testimony pulls back the curtain on something much bigger, a system of protection, silence, and unchecked power in the entertainment world. From Jay-Z to R. Kelly, from radio blacklists to secret NDAs, Wendy showed up with receipts, timestamps, and chilling stories the industry never wanted aired. This wasn't some tabloid gossip. It was a bombshell deposition under oath, with the entire courtroom hanging on every word. What Wendy Williams said about Diddy, Jay-Z, and their twisted ties could unravel an entire industry.
The hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs has arrived in court for opening statements ahead of his trial in New York.
Buckle up, because Wendy didn't just testify, she turned the courtroom into her signature purple chair. When Wendy walked into that courtroom, it didn't feel like a celebrity showing up. It felt like someone who'd been buried, clawed her way out, and returned to speak the truth no one wanted heard. She wasn't chasing headlines. She wasn't chasing clout. She was there because for years they tried everything to shut her down. Lawsuits, threats, blacklists, and late-night punchlines. But now, every warning she dropped on her old radio show is part of a federal investigation. She sat down, faced the jury, and calmly adjusted her mic. Her voice was steady, but you could feel the weight in every word. I was never messy. I was never bitter. I was never lying. I was early. And just like that, Wendy launched into testimony about the threats, the cover-ups, and the power games she says Diddy orchestrated behind the scenes. Things she's been calling out for decades. When I first started talking about Diddy, she told the court, I wasn't trying to tear him down. I was trying to wake people up. Then, without flinching, Wendy pulled out a thick stack of papers, old show transcripts, emails from executives, a printed timeline of events. It was a roadmap of how Diddy allegedly tried to shut her down, piece by piece. She started with the early 2000s. He was protected. Everyone knew it. You couldn't say his name without getting a call within the hour. She laid out moments when station managers pulled her aside, when ad sponsors vanished, and when vague threats became very real. You're doing too much, Wendy. You're going to get hurt, Wendy. Then she dropped the story that made the courtroom freeze.
But y'all had bad blood for a while.
Real bad.
Real bad blood.
The worst blood.
There was a radio personality once upon a time. Her name was Wendy Williams. And she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle.
Wendy said she was literally chased out of her radio station by a girl group allegedly sent by Diddy. All I said was they were broke. A few hours later, they were outside my building. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. She described her career like a battlefield. Every time I exposed something, his parties, how he treated artists, something in my world collapsed. A sponsor, a deal, an invite, gone. But she made one thing clear. You can blackball me, you can threaten me, but you can't erase me. And now I'm under oath. So I hope they're listening, because I'm not stopping until the truth is loud enough to shut their machine down. Then the prosecution asked her about the culture surrounding Diddy. Wendy's tone shifted. If you're going to talk about Diddy, she said, you can't leave out the people who stood beside him, smiling, silent, while it all happened. And then she named him Jay-Z. Wendy's eyes scanned the jury. Then she leaned in, her voice low but unwavering. Y'all remember Foxy Brown? She asked. She was 15. Jay-Z was 27, and he was everywhere with her. You could feel the courtroom hold its breath. Then Wendy pulled out a sheet of paper. Lyrics from Foxy's debut album. Songs that, according to her, Jay-Z helped write. She read them aloud, word for word. Ain't no nump like the one I got. No one can me better. The room recoiled. Jurors glanced at each other. One covered their mouth. You tell me, she said, why was a grown man writing that for a child? She didn't stop there. Wendy described what insiders had whispered for years. Jay allegedly picking Foxy up from high school, lavish gifts, shopping sprees, hair appointments, trips. This wasn't just a label signing, she said. This was grooming. And then she dropped a bombshell. There was a rumor for years, Wendy said slowly, that a tape existed. Jay-Z, Foxy, and Jamie Foxx. The jury shifted in their seats, but you never heard about it again. Know why? She let the silence build. Because right after the rumor started, Foxy's house was broken into, and the tape, gone. She stared forward. Coincidence? I think not.
Watch this.
Did you get fired for making fun of Puffy?
Something like that.
Well, listen, you figure it out. You do the music of what was playing back in 1998 on the majority of every radio station 25 times an hour.
Okay, it's not a denial.
Wendy said shortly after she aired those questions on her top-rated radio show, she was fired. They called me toxic, she said. But now, years later, you're seeing that everything I asked was worth asking. The prosecution asked if she had proof. Wendy nodded. I've got emails, call logs, names of producers who pulled out of my show the moment I mentioned Jay. She claimed Jay-Z's team made private calls, blackballing anyone who brought up Foxy. They turned me into the villain, she said. Not because I lied, but because I was right. Then she turned to the jury and locked eyes. You think I lost sponsors for being messy. I lost sponsors because I was right. And they couldn't let that truth spread. Next came what Wendy called the part nobody wanted to believe. The part that got her branded a liar, a loudmouth, a problem. I was the first to say it, she told the court. Those weren't parties, they were operations. She was talking about the now infamous freak-offs, a term that's become central to the federal indictment against Sean Diddy Combs. Wendy said she first caught whispers of these events back in the late 90s, when Bad Boy Records was at its peak.
As the mother of a now 16-year-old.
Who I met backstage, he did? He's a great young man.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
You represent a lot.
You can see how awkward she is as soon as she hears they met.
Back then, the rumors were treated like industry myth, too strange to be real, too dangerous to investigate. But Wendy did. No phones, NDAs at the door, candle escorts, assigned rooms, cameras placed just so. This wasn't a house party, she said. It was a ritual. She brought up Karen Superhead Steffens, the former video vixen who once joined Wendy on air. She told me Diddy invited her to one of those parties, Wendy said, and he asked for male involvement. She didn't lie, Wendy added. She described the setups, the drugs, his paranoia, everything. He was scared she'd talk. Wendy paused, then leaned in again, and I made sure people heard that interview. I played it again and again because the truth was too heavy to let it pass. She spoke of others, men and women, who'd attended these events and returned shaken. They weren't just partying, she said. They were told what to wear, who to touch, which room to go to. Wendy testified she personally interviewed 3 different individuals who described IV bags being used to recover afterward, just like the federal indictment now states. They told her there were medical assistants on standby.
Did you get fired for making fun of Puffy?
Yeah, by Hot 97. I had to fight a lawsuit. You know what it all came down to? It
came down to gay rappers. That's what it was.
Gay rappers and
exposing them.
and exposing.
This wasn't socializing, she said. This was organized depravity. Then she handed over a document, a list of pseudonyms representing people who'd shared their experiences with her privately, off air, off record, but detailed enough to map a pattern, and the court fell silent. Because those stories, they lined up. They matched what Cassie Ventura, Gina Hoyne, Gan Deal, and other witnesses have testified to. And then Wendy delivered the line that stunned even the most skeptical. The baby oil, she said. I joked about it on the radio once, but it wasn't funny. They really did find over 1,000 bottles, just like I said. You know how I knew? She asked, looking straight ahead. Because people told me, and I was the only one willing to say it. She sat back in the chair, composed, eyes steady. Then she glanced over at Diddy. All these years later, she said quietly, and we're finally here. Now it's not gossip, it's evidence. The courtroom grew more silent with each word. Wendy Williams adjusted her posture, then shifted focus, this time to someone she said she'd been defending for years, Cassie Ventura. I said it back then, Wendy declared, her eyes locked on the jury.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named Wendy And she was on the radio talking all this way back in the day. I've been telling you things for years, but you don't want to hear. So, all right, fine.
Y'all were mesmerized by the diamonds, the music videos, the red carpets, but I saw a scared girl. I saw imbalance, and I said it on the air. Something about that relationship was off. She testified that as early as 2008, she'd tried to warn her listeners about the obsessive control Diddy allegedly had over Cassie. She was 19, Wendy said. He was pushing 40. That's not love. That's leverage. She explained how Diddy's lifestyle, private jets, security, media dominance made it nearly impossible for Cassie to leave. I said it then and I'll say it now. She didn't need a boyfriend. She needed a bodyguard. Then Wendy reminded the courtroom of a clip she once played on her show. It showed Cassie during an interview looking down as Diddy raised his voice. People said it was nerves. I called it what it was, trauma, but nobody listened. The prosecution entered into evidence a detailed timeline of Wendy's broadcasts, matching key claims in Cassie's civil and criminal filings.
And I don't understand parents who unleash their kids. Oh, it's just a deeply moving story to me because I know all of the story. She knows.
I was told he had access to her phones, that he showed up at her hotel without warning, that staff were told to unlock her doors. Wendy paused, and when I said that out loud, my sponsors pulled the plug. Then came the 2018 incident, when Cassie reportedly ended the relationship after Diddy allegedly forced his way into her home. That wasn't the first time, Wendy said. People don't understand. When a mogul wants control, they don't ask for permission. They make the world rearrange itself around them. She gave the court a chilling breakdown of how that power plays out. Grooming, isolation, leverage, industry obedience masked as luxury. He didn't just love Cassie, he owned her. And when she broke the chain, she became dangerous. Then she added, her voice steady. Everything in that lawsuit, I saw it. I said it publicly, and now she's finally being heard. But at what cost? Wendy reached forward, adjusted her mic again. Her voice didn't shake, but it slowed. You don't get to talk about men like Diddy and walk away clean, she said. I knew that, but I didn't know just how deep it would go. Until it happened. She testified that in 2004, at the absolute peak of her radio career, she received a message from a record label executive. 4 words: stop talking about Puff or else. Wendy didn't flinch. She kept going. The very next week, she said, I was pulled from my afternoon time slot. They didn't even pretend it wasn't about him. It was punishment. She told the court she'd heard from multiple sources that Diddy had made phone calls, strategic ones, to label heads, concert promoters, and top radio networks, warning them to distance themselves from Wendy Williams. One program director said it plain, she recalled. You went too far. You poked the wrong bear. Then she revisited one of the scariest moments of her career, standing in the lobby of her own radio station when the girl group Total showed up. She had just called them washed up and broke on air. They didn't just show up randomly, Wendy said. They were sent. She painted the scene in vivid detail. Fans pressed against the glass outside, her boyfriend waiting in the car, her intern in a panic. That wasn't just a confrontation, she told the jury. That was a message. We can get to you. From there, she listed the fallout. Disinvited from BET events. Media passes revoked. Advertising deals vanished overnight. It was all coordinated, she said. Diddy didn't just want to stop me. He wanted to erase me. Then she produced the receipts, printed emails from PR firms representing Bad Boy at the time, each one cutting ties, each one citing the same reason, per client instruction. She held one email up high. Per client instruction, we will no longer be booking talent on Wendy Williams' show. And that client, she said, Sean Combs. Wendy looked directly at the jury. I wasn't the first to be blackballed, but I was one of the few who stayed loud about it. She paused, then added, that's what he does. If you speak, you lose everything. Your mic, your money, your name. But I didn't fold. I talked through the silence, and here I am. Wendy sat still for a moment, then she leaned in with something more personal. We come from a very homosexual era of hip-hop, she said, quoting words she'd said back in the early 2000s. That wasn't shade, that was truth. And for saying it, I was burned at the stake. She explained how there was a quiet, powerful effort within the industry to protect certain stars by shaming or punishing anyone who questioned them. I had Charlemagne on the air with me, and even back then, we knew what not to say if we wanted to stay employed. But I said it anyway. Wendy brought up her 2004 book, The Wendy Williams Experience, filled with veiled warnings and coded references to Diddy, Jay-Z, and their off-the-record lives. People called it gossip, she said, but now the government calls it evidence. She then described her 2009 interview with former Bad Boy artist Mark Curry, who had just released Dancing with the Devil. He called Diddy the shadow that ruins people, Wendy said. I agreed, and suddenly, that interview vanished from the station's archive. She testified that every time she gave a platform to someone who spoke out, Superhead, Gene Deal, Jaguar Wright, the blowback came fast. Emails, FCC complaints, calls from management, veiled threats. They tried to shut me down through every angle they could. Then she dropped something that made the entire courtroom lean in. There was a list, she said, not written down, but everybody in the industry knew it. A list of people you weren't allowed to talk about. And when I broke that rule, I paid. She said her Hot Topic segments were constantly being flagged for internal review. Producers were getting threatened by talent reps. Executives pulled her aside off record to warn her, back off. But Wendy didn't. She kept pushing, and now finally she was under oath with the receipts. Wendy didn't pause. She didn't blink. She kept going. They said I was gonna mess it all up for the station, for myself. She paused, but now it's all messed up anyway, because the truth is out. Her voice dropped, steady and low. This trial isn't the beginning, she said. It's the end of a cover-up, and I want the jury to know I've been sounding this alarm for 20 years. You're just now hearing it. The courtroom was frozen in stillness, and Wendy's tone changed, sharper, more focused. You think this is just about Diddy? She asked, locking eyes with the jury. You're wrong. This is about the ecosystem that protected him, and that includes names you were never supposed to hear in a courtroom. She said the names out loud. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey. The room went silent. The prosecution asked her to explain. She didn't hesitate. There's a list in Hollywood, not one you'll ever see, not one you'll ever hold, but it's real. She paused. It's the list of people you do not cross, and if you do, you disappear. Wendy then described what happened after her infamous radio segments, when she began calling out Diddy's behavior publicly and questioning the powerful names surrounding him. I had sources, producers, agents, and they told me flat out, Wendy, your name is being passed around. They don't want you touching certain topics. You're being labeled unstable. She told the court how her relationship with The Precious Team, a film led by Tyler Perry and Oprah, completely unraveled after she publicly criticized their Hollywood circles. One day I was getting invites to every premiere. The next, I was erased. She recalled what one studio exec told her. Oprah's people don't want you near her anymore. Then Wendy said something that chilled the entire courtroom. She testified that she once confided in Oprah privately about her own past trauma involving abuse. She told me she respected me, Wendy said, that she'd never exploit my story. And yet, next thing I know, my abuser was on her show being interviewed, and I was blackballed. That wasn't just betrayal, that was retaliation. She looked out over the stunned jury. They smiled with him. They took pictures. They stood beside Diddy while the rest of us were getting crushed for speaking out. And I know why. Because they needed him. For deals, for reach, for silence. Wendy then revealed an email that had been accidentally forwarded to her by a PR firm working for both Tyler Perry's studio and a Bad Boy affiliated brand. The subject line read, Managing Optics, Wendy, Puff, Tyler. That's all it said. And for Wendy, that was all she needed. These aren't just isolated stars, she said. They're a machine that feeds on silence and destroys anyone who dares pull back the curtain. By now, the air in the courtroom felt thick. And then came the moment prosecutors would later call a turning point in the trial. Wendy reached into her bag and pulled out a thick file folder. This, she said, tapping the cover, is a collection of NDAs, email threads, and internal memos that were never supposed to see the light of day. She made it clear she hadn't hacked anything. She got them from friends in the industry, people who'd left the game, who were tired of watching women disappear, tired of seeing truth-labeled gossip. She opened the folder and read aloud from an NDA dated 2007. The name was redacted, but the language was haunting. Subject agrees not to disclose any private gatherings, recordings, or interactions with Mr. Sean Combs, his guests, or associates. Violation may result in financial penalties and public retaliation. She slammed the page onto the table. Public retaliation, she said. That's how deep it went. Next, she read from an internal email from a luxury hotel chain. We have prepared the presidential suite with all requested amenities, including extra linens, candlelight lighting, and discretion measures. Mr. Combs' assistant will arrive for setup prior to guest entry. The date? 2015. Cassie was still with him. You think this was just celebrity partying? Wendy asked. Number, this was a system, planned, funded, scheduled, and cleaned up afterward. She went on to reveal that she had proof of payments made to publicists, managers, and even bloggers to shape the narrative. She read one email that told a writer to avoid any mention of recent rumors and instead highlight Diddy's philanthropic efforts. Then came the photo, one the prosecution displayed to the jury. Diddy, Tyler Perry, a media consultant known for crisis cleanups, all smiling arm in arm at a 2019 gala. They were smiling, Wendy said, while women were being paid to shut up and others were being destroyed for refusing to sign. She told the jury she too was offered an NDA. They said I could have a syndicated TV deal if I just moved on. If I stopped talking about what I knew, I said no, and I paid the price. The room was still. The silence they bought, she said, cost others their freedom, their peace, their truth. And now, it's all unraveling, one NDA at a time. Wendy reached the final portion of her testimony, and still, she didn't cry. She didn't break. She sat, composed, shoulders back, voice clear. You see Diddy on trial, she told the court, but I see something much bigger. This isn't just about what he did, it's about who let him do it. She gestured toward the defense table. You see one man. I see a legacy of silence. A tower built on fear, on NDAs, on power plays, and billion-dollar handshakes. Then she turned to the jury, and every time someone tried to speak, that tower crushed them. She reminded the court, while Diddy is the one charged, others, Jay-Z, Perry, Oprah, the labels, the handlers, stood by for years. Some watched the abuse happen firsthand. They shook his hand. They took his checks. They helped silence the people who spoke up. Wendy's final words echoed like a siren in the room. I was called bitter. I was called crazy, but I was right, and I'd rather be right in hell than silent in heaven. She turned her eyes toward Diddy, who had stayed mostly stone-faced through her entire testimony. You thought I was gone. You thought your power was enough. But now, you sit where the truth finally caught up to you, and I hope it's loud. Before stepping down, she turned once more toward the gallery. This trial isn't the end, it's the beginning of people finally naming names, of the walls cracking, and of the whole tower one day falling down. And just like that, Wendy Williams walked out.